Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the hashtag Secure the Grad Student Support Webinar. Today, I'll be your host for today, and I'm Bonolo Mahlatsi, and I'm the Officer for Senior Student Experience, and I coordinate hashtag Secure the Grad. I look forward to today's engagement. I hope you're all excited. Before we get the conversation started, I want our attendees today to just let us know from where are they joining, how are they feeling, how are the academics, are they already in test week, how are the assessments lining up. And while we still prepare ourselves for the conversation today, I just want to run our attendees through some rules that we have for the day. Please remember to ensure that you keep your mic muted throughout the session. There will be an opportunity for you later on where we will enable your mic and you can ask one of our speakers questions. Please also remember that it's important that when you join the session, you do join with your full name and surname so that you can be eligible for our award, our prize at the later stage of the webinar today. Otherwise, if you don't give us your full name, we will not be able to identify you. Together with the mics, please also make sure that you remember to keep your camera off. Please also note that as the conversation unfolds, you are more than welcome to interact with any of our speakers as the conversation unfolds. And as we continue with the session as well, we will also have polls at different intervals within the session, and you will have the opportunity to give us your quick responses so that we can get a sense of where you are and what you already know about the conversation that we have today. Now, we are continuing the conversation that we had last week, and that in the previous week focused more on academic support, but it's not a far off conversation today. It's technically the same, but we just have a different panel of speakers today. Great people indeed. I cannot wait to introduce our speakers to you so that you can get to know them more beyond all the communication that you received. Now, to introduce our speakers, we've got Zayne, Mintoor. We're going to give each of our speakers an opportunity to introduce themselves. We've got Mosa from CUADS, we've got Nothando from the Social Support Office, and we have Moses from representing the SRC. Now that we've gone through the round of briefly mentioning our speakers this afternoon, I want to give each of the speakers an opportunity to just walk us through and tell us about themselves and what their roles entail. And they can also tell us about, what a typical day looks like for them and also what's the most rewarding thing about their role. So I'm going to start off with our first speaker of the day, which is Zayne. Zayne, if you could answer those three questions that we have that serve the purpose of introducing yourself to our attendees this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Bonolo, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope this is going to be a fruitful session. So, as Bonolo has mentioned, my name is Zayne Mintoor. I am the coordinator for learning technology support. My roles include making sure that the university's learning management system, which is Blackboard, operates optimally and efficiently. Also supporting both staff from undergraduates to postgraduate students, including your academic personnel and support staff members as well on that Blackboard system, including any other learning technologies. A typical day for me involves ensuring and reviewing that all of our technologies, including Blackboard and the others, are working fine, and with a lot of meetings to ensure that our students are happy with their academics, as well as support service members. So that's how it goes for me on a typical day. Thanks, Bonolo.
Zayne, and what's the most rewarding thing about your role?
Yeah, the most rewarding thing, right? So for me, we do deal with a lot of student queries. And I think for me, the most important thing, which is also the most rewarding for me, is to ensure that any student who, requires our support is put on their way to achieving their goals within a module or within their degree as fast as possible with minimal disruptions. It always helps, when students do respond as well to feedback we share, thanking us for that. So that's really rewarding for me.
Thank you very much, Zayne. Now our students finally get to see the face behind Blackboard, representing many other faces, of course. Moving over to Mosa, if you can just introduce yourself to our attendees this afternoon.
Can you see me and hear me? Awesome. My name is Mosa Moerane. I'm from the Center for Universal Access and Disability Support. It is known as CUADS across campus. I am the Liaison Advocacy and Awareness Officer. A typical day for me isn't generally typical, really. I don't have any 2 days that look exactly the same. But my role in general involves marketing of CUADS, making sure as well that we provide training and workshops on disability and sensitivity trainings across campus to both our students and our departments, that is staff, and external stakeholders from time to time that we collaborate with. I am also responsible for making sure that our database is up to date. So that's a bit on the admin side of my work, as well as representing CUADS on different what do you call this, committees, bodies, and things like that, as well as quite a bit of event planning. So a lot of the events that CUADS initiates are usually led by myself. So yeah, that's my day. And the most rewarding part, sorry, I just remembered. I think the most rewarding part for me is really the whole job, because you wake up every day with a sense of purpose and meaning, particularly in effect to, advancing human rights and social justice, shifting the institutional culture towards a more embracing and inclusive agenda, making sure that students with disabilities have equitable participation within every part of the university, whether it's their academics or co-curricular programs or any activities that they're interested in. So I think it's always rewarding to see, I think, graduation. Our students, when they graduate, it's always quite a special occasion for us. So yeah, I have the privilege of having a generally rewarding job. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Mosa. We'll circle back to you once you get to your part of the conversation. Next up, we have Nothando.
Thank you, Bonolo. Good afternoon, attendees. My name is Nothando Hlophe, and I am basically, in a nutshell, responsible for ensuring that social support services are all on the 3 campuses, that we are consistent and we are responsive, but I'll explain later how we work. The most rewarding thing, I must align with Mosa. We're from one unit, so makes sense. For me, I'll make an example. Last year I went to Spa, random day. I was buying something, and this guy comes up to me. He greets me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay," because we help a lot of students, so it's not possible to remember all of our students. So he says to me, "No, don't you remember you helped me 2 years ago? I had emergency accommodation. I had to sleep somewhere." So he explains to me what was happening. Then he says, "Yeah, but I'm the manager now." I'm like, "What? Of this spa?" So those are the aha moments, that what we're doing is really bigger than us, and seeing students succeed, I think, is absolutely amazing. A typical day for me, I don't have a typical day. Every day is different. But maybe I would say a typical day would be getting a case I've never dealt with before and having to figure out, how do I actually support this person? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nothando. Moving over to Moses. I am not sure if all right, thank you for the indication, Evodi. I've just noted the comment. Now that we've taken the introductions out of the way, we will give Moses an opportunity to introduce himself when he joins us later on. So let's now move to the formal part of our conversation. And our first speaker lined up this afternoon is Zayne. So Zayne, I would like to hear from you, right? How, please tell us about Blackboard, and how do you ensure that you fully make students aware of all the features included into the learning management system and how they can utilize those features optimally?
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the question, Banola. So Blackboard, as I've mentioned, you've also mentioned, it is the university's learning management system. And basically that means that this is the virtual space or the online space, particularly within a blended learning environment, which the university finds itself in, where contact with students takes place. So all of their classes, all of their engagement with their lecturers, with their fellow classmates. And then really Blackboard is very vast. There are a lot of features and tools available in it. So to ensure that students are aware of these various tools and features, we do engage a lot with lecturers and other staff members in terms of utilizing and integrating those features and tools into their teaching and learning practices, but also within tutorial spaces, we do make use of a lot of these features and tools, including various platforms such as the Blackboard Help organization, where we do introduce and make resources on this available then for students. And that's most generally how they become aware of those features and tools.
Thank you very much, Zayne. Now, you've mentioned that there are many tools that you make sure, students have access to. Can you please tell us about what are the most common challenges or technical issues that students have often reported to you and together with the Blackboard team?
Yeah. So there's quite a few common challenges, and it takes place during different phases of the academic year, if we can call it that. The number one thing that we've seen this far, and I'll put it in context of the current year, is password and username related issues. So with this, it's very important for students to understand, of course, that when they register, a password and username is created for them by our Information Communication Technology Services or ICT department. So that's the number one thing. When students do have issues with this, it's very important for students to be aware that, yes, they can contact us, but the actual relevant department to contact would be ICT. And they need to know at least what their student number is, so that either ICT or the Blackboard team can just put them on the right track and actually investigate to see if that password or username is active and on the system, and we can get them going. Some other common challenges include also the availability of modules, for instance, or organizations on Blackboard. We've also seen this during the registration period. So when students do register at the University of the Free State and this information becomes available on their proof of registration, it is very important that they are aware that they do need to wait 24 hours before the modules will automatically reflect. So that's more just from a technical standpoint. In terms of the Blackboard itself and the various features and tools, some of the common challenges we see there is assessments. So with assessments, I'm referring to Blackboard quizzes or tests, including assignments such as Turnitin as well. I would advise students when they view a assessment of any nature that they are very clear in terms of the instructions provided on the assessment from their lecturers. In other words, they make sure that they know when the due date is. If it's an assignment such as Turnitin, for instance, is it what we call a draft box or is the final submission box? Simply meaning, can I submit multiple times or can I only submit one time in particular? Then another common one, which is most likely, I'm just going to give you these three core ones, would be Blackboard navigation. So we do understand that not all of our students across the three campuses come from the same background, for instance, and that refers to the technological background that they might have been exposed to. So that is something we see a lot. However, we do have services available as well to address that. I would encourage students in this case just to actively log into Blackboard, play around, go through their modules and familiarize themselves with where the different, let's say, learning materials are located within modules, at least, for their courses. Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you very much, Zayne. Now, can you please tell us, are there specific tools, right? Now that you've mentioned that students, should go on Blackboard and play around, but are there specific tools that you would like to recommend students to use that will assist them to improve their academic performance?
Yeah, most definitely. These are actually tools that we actively do try and make students aware as well and get their lecturers to use it as well. And we refer to these as collaboration tools. So collaboration tools refer to your journals, your blogs, your wikis, and your discussion boards. Out of all of those, discussion boards is my favorite. It affords you the opportunity, all of them, but discussion boards more so, for students the opportunity just to engage with their fellow classmates and also engage with the instructor in a live environment almost, although they might not be seeing each other. So use this when you have group assignments, for instance, that need to be submitted. You don't need to be in the same physical space to engage with your group members. And also the groups as well. So you'll notice that some of your lecturers or some of your tutors and facilitators will enroll you or ask you to join a group on Blackboard for a course. Those groups have various tools available within them, such as what I've mentioned just now. They also have their own Blackboard Collaborate space that students can join in there and have virtual meetings without needing access to, for instance, Microsoft Teams, for instance, or Skype. So those are very, very valuable tools that students can use then to improve their academic understanding, but also looking at another tool that is available and made available by lecturers is the My Grades tool. I would encourage students, view your grades here, view the feedback. So when you have any questions and you do approach your lecturer, that you do have a background in terms of your grades that you are querying with your lecturer. And then lastly, we all know that when we log into Blackboard, the first place we land on is the activity stream. The activity stream is crucial. It gives you immediate updates in terms of your various submission deadlines for any assessment, announcements, or any initiatives that is taking place for your module or even in the institution itself. So that's very important because on there as well, you do get your email notifications even, and there is also a little feature which tells you how are you doing compared to the rest of your classmates in a particular course. So you can use that to see then where further improvements can be made in your studying.
All right, now Zayne, you've touched on the different, features that students can explore, to have a better understanding and how to, effectively use Blackboard. Are there perhaps any resources or training material that can assist students to become more proficient with using Blackboard? And in addition to this, do you also know of any other learning technologies that students can use to supplement their learning?
Yep. So definitely the resources that are available, I've mentioned the one already, which is the Blackboard Help organization. We've recently just renamed that to the Educational Technology Help portal. All students are enrolled into this organization automatically as soon as they've registered at the University of Free State, and they can find that underneath their organizations tab when they log into Blackboard. So on this portal is all of the technologies that we find commonly are used that I've even mentioned just now by students and lecturers, full videos as well as PDF guides or how-tos as we call them that students can make use of. That is available. There's also the Student Success Portal. Once again, all students have access to this, also located underneath their organizations, where they can access these resources at their leisure in their own time and space as well, for that reason. The tools that I would recommend that students can use to further their learning, for instance, would be tools, and I will address this also a bit later. First one is LinkedIn Learning. So that's a very, very valuable tool that we see that you can supplement your learning with. It is actively being used by lecturers as well and professionals within a university environment and outside as well. There's also new tools that we have recently, since last year, acquired, such as Feedback Fruits. So some of the students might have seen their lecturers use this, especially within the education faculties or law faculties. There's also Panopto, a new video tool, very, very nice tool. I would encourage students to please, if they see this, really engage with this tool. And then there's also, of course, what we call Class Collaborate, which is previously known as the Blackboard Collaborate, as I've mentioned it. So that tool is not just a video conferencing tool. It is a tool that is designed to make use of engagement features for students with their peers once again and with their lecturers as well.
Thank you very much, Zayne. As you were explaining, I was also keeping an eye on the chat and I see the
There's
questions are already
there's a
flowing
lot.
in. But there will be an opportunity where we will address each and every
Yeah.
one of them. But you are more than welcome to, continue with them. But I'm not done with you. We're still carrying on with our conversation. I was just noting the questions that are flowing in. So we've touched on the common issues or technical challenges that students often communicate to your office. Now, if a student experience any of these, right, what are the steps they need to follow to receive assistance in addressing these technical issues, including LinkedIn Learning as well?
Right. Thanks, Mintoor. So very important. We try and communicate this as much as we can with students. Obviously, the goal with the support we deliver, because we realize that students are at the center of what the university does, and the success is number one. What we try and encourage students to do when they do reach out for us for support, and I'll also share the details just in a bit, is you need certain bits of information to be able to assist the student very efficiently. So number one, all students have their UFS for Life email addresses and accounts. So we do encourage students to please make use of the UFS for Life email. If it's not possible for some reason, we do understand at times that they might make use of their personal email, but we really do encourage the UFS for Life email. Secondly, students, we always encourage them to as well just provide us with a very clear and at least detailed explanation of the challenge they are facing. Sometimes we do find that the information is a bit vague, and we have to, try and get a hold of the student for a better explanation. So along with the information that you do provide to us, the description of the challenge you're facing, we might also ask, and we actually do encourage that when you do submit the support request, that you provide us with any evidence you might have as well. The most common form of evidence would be a screenshot. Once again, the technical background of our students is not on par, or at least the same across the board, and they might find it difficult to explain what a challenge is. So if I have a screenshot, it helps me to see immediately almost what the challenge is the student is facing. So that's very important. And also just to make sure that if the issue they are facing is within a module on Blackboard, that they do provide us with the module code as well. We find students across the board have anywhere from one module to 13 modules in their current academic year. So that helps us actively investigating, but also if we do find that there is perhaps a greater challenge beyond just one student in a module, we are then also, that enables us to then reach out to the lecturer of that module and also communicate with them that there might be a problem here concerning, for instance, an assessment test. So in terms of the support where students can reach us, I'll put that there in the chat just now, but I'll just say it now. So we have essentially one email that we do use for Blackboard support queries or requests, as we like to call them. And that is, the email is ehelpdesk@ufs.ac.za. We also have a self-service portal where if you go on the self-service portal, you can either report a challenge to us that you're facing, or you can view the solutions that we have placed there for you to help yourself, hence the name self-service portal. So the URL for this is sdp.ufs.ac.za. Then for any LinkedIn challenges that you might experience, such as profile problems or creating accounts, password issues as well, students are welcome to email us at lil, so that's LIL, @ufs.ac.za.
Thank you very much, Zayne, for your insightful information. We are going to park our conversation here for now, but we will circle back to you when we get to the Q&A segment. To our listeners or our viewers this afternoon, we have our first poll up, so do participate in it and continue engaging in our session this afternoon. Now, just to sum up some of the points that Zayne highlighted, he mentioned that if you do want to be assisted as quick as possible, do ensure that your query is as clear and concise as can be, so that the technical team can attend to your issue accordingly, so that you can get the assistance that you are seeking. Now that we've ended our conversation with our Blackboard colleague, we will have continue the conversation with him at a later stage. We are now transitioning our conversation to Mosa to get a sense and a better understanding of what CUADS is. So, Mosa, you are next up in the conversation this afternoon. And the first question that I have for you is, please tell us what is CUADS and what support does it offer students?
Thank you so much, Bonol. So CUADS, as I mentioned earlier, is the Center for Universal Access and Disability Support. We are the university's disability unit. In essence, we provide support to students with different disabilities. So we categorize them into different categories. So you have students who have visual impairments. These are students who are blind or partially sighted. And the question I get often at trainings, particularly with students, is whether wearing spectacles counts as being partially sighted. The short answer there is no. But the longer answer is that we support students, we regard students who are partially sighted as students who have visual conditions that cannot be corrected with the use of spectacles. So if you think about students who have visual loss or partial visual loss due to glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, because these particular conditions, whether you give somebody spectacles or not, because of how they manifest, the person's loss of vision is incorrectable. We also provide support to students with hearing impairment. So if you think about deaf students, students who are hard of hearing as well, we provide support to. We also differentiate between students who are deaf and those who are culturally deaf. And the difference is really primarily has to do with the onset of the hearing loss. So if you consider, for example, someone who was born, with hearing loss, their primary language would be sign language, and therefore not necessarily a spoken language. And so their use for an interpreter, for example, is different from someone who experienced hearing loss later on in life. And so those are some of the differences in that particular category. We also support students with mobility impairments. So if you think about students who are wheelchair users, students with progressive conditions such as muscular dystrophy, which is something that happens a lot, well, not a lot, but is quite prevalent. So someone would enter the university space, walking regularly. And then as time goes, they discover that or are diagnosed with a particular condition that has an impact on their mobility, whether it's as a result of, loss of muscle, or perhaps they have an injury or a condition, a spinal injury, for example. So we do have students who are paraplegic, students who are quadriplegic. We also support a lot of students with temporary injuries, which is a big cohort as well of that particular category of students. So if somebody, for example, is involved in a car accident and is injured, whether it's in their walking or, sometimes someone's predominant arm or dominant arm is not predominant, dominant arm is broken, and in the time that it takes for your arm to heal, your assessments don't stop. So there's support provided for such students as well, students with chronic conditions as well. So if you can think about students who have diabetes as well, and one might wonder why would we provide, or how we could provide any support to a student with diabetes. But if you think about sort of the administration of their treatment, so if someone, for example, has to sit through a 3-hour exam, and through that at some point in that 3 hours they have to administer their treatment, it's only through CUADS venues that a person can have stop the clock, for example, and administer and then continue with the assessment. We also provide support to students who have learning difficulties. Actually, this is our biggest cohort of students. Actually, I always say that students with learning difficulties on our database make up half of our database. So if I combine the other categories together, they still wouldn't add up to the number of students we have with learning difficulties. So, and this is important because these are disabilities that are not perceptible, unlike the other categories that I have mentioned. So the majority of our students with disabilities are students with disabilities that you couldn't perceive necessarily with the natural eye. So if you think about students with dyslexia, students with dysgraphia, which is like terrible handwriting, well, not terrible, but you struggle to read the handwriting. And then we also provide support to students with ADHD. So ADHD is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. We also provide support to that particular category of students, and we also always emphasize that it's important that we understand that students can have a combination of disabilities. So we understand that no two students, despite the fact they could even be in the same category, disability category, are the same. So even the support services that we provide are different for them, because like I mentioned earlier, even with interpreting services for our students with hearing impairments, a student might need an interpreter for a different purpose, someone who has been deaf their whole lives and someone who's experienced hearing loss later on and is not necessarily fluent in South African Sign Language would have a different use for an interpreter. So we make sure that we try and align our support in that way. We also work together with a lot of our university departments, because as you can imagine, CUADS cannot, is not necessarily responsible for infrastructure, for example, but we do work together a lot with university estates to ensure the physical accessibility of our university. And we also do provide individual support. So each category of students has a disability support coordinator who is responsible for them. But yeah, that's in a nutshell what we do.
All right, that's quite a lot, I must say.
Quite a mouthful.
Yes, and now that you've basically, in a very subtle way, explained the demographic landscape of your students, right? Can you perhaps tell us what are the most common challenges that students experience, and how does the UFS assist those students, or particularly CUADS?
Okay. So some of a big part of the challenges we experience has to do with negative stereotypes. I think that is the biggest one. So there's this idea that, disability is inability. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we do experience from every sort of space is trying to shift mindsets towards embracing and understanding that the university especially is the kind of space where if anyone is studying in a particular course, it means they have met the university set standards to be in it. And all we do then is make sure that we level the playing field for students with disabilities to succeed, for them to overcome any barriers and inaccessibility that they might come across. So we have, and then born from that, you have different, you can kind of identify different challenges. So if you think about, for example, what it means to a student with disability, with a mobility impairment when they arrive at a lecture venue and the lecture venue is on the first floor and there's no lift in that particular building. For a non-disabled student, it's quite inconvenient. You'll just go up the stairs and then get to class. For someone else, that's the end of that class for that day. Until they come, to us at CUADS and report the issue. And I had mentioned that we work quite closely with university estates and student academic services to make sure that, all our lecture venues, that particularly those for our students with mobility impairments, are accessible. Sometimes the venue is accessible and it's locked. The accessible door is locked. Fortunately, we have a very responsive university estates department that quickly then attends to those kind of issues. But sometimes you'll find that the venue itself is inaccessible. So then we have to sort of, especially in this time of the year, in the first 3 weeks, as students are going to classes for the first time in the semester, they then encounter these challenges. So responding to them is quite important. We also work together with NSFAS quite a lot. So students with disabilities are students of the university, and what is common to the UFS student is common to them as well. So if anyone is experiencing NSFAS challenges, it means even students with disabilities are experiencing NSFAS challenges. I think the only sort of added layer has to do with the fact that NSFAS funds our students' assistive technologies and devices. So unfortunately, for example, we are having a slow response or administration delays. It means that there's a delay on our end for our students to gain access to their assistive devices and technologies. So we liaise and work together quite closely with our NSFAS office here on campus. We also try our best from a departmental perspective to try and address those issues on a case-by-case basis, perhaps loaning out equipment and so on until such a time that those kind of issues are solved. But I think also one of the more I think neglected challenges has to do with mental health. I think students with disabilities, would obviously be susceptible to burnout, fatigue, because as you can imagine, each and every student has to kind of figure out their way through the university system. It's that much more difficult for a student with a disability if, for example, it's a deaf student in a generally hearing university, the challenges and the barriers that they face. If you think about blind students as well. So I think we have had to really partner with SCD quite deliberately in the last couple of years to address those challenges. Yeah. So yeah, that's for me the more prevalent challenges. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mosa. As you were explaining, I also kept my eye on the chat, and I see the questions are already flowing, but you will have the opportunity to engage them. Now, Mosa, you've just mentioned also that, you know, there are those unheard of or unspeakable issues that students have, you know, and I would like to think that the anxiety that it creates, the burnout and all of that, and, you know, one would feel so insecure to even come forward, you know, to even seek assistance, let alone. But now I want you to tell us, right, what is the process that a student needs to follow when they declare their disability, and at what point then after declaring does the support then get activated within CUADS?
Thank you for that question. So it's quite simple actually to get support from us. All you have to do is either send us an email, quads@ufs.ac.za, informing us that you'd like to receive support from our offices due to a particular, either, like I've mentioned, either chronic condition, a disability, or a temporary injury. Or whoever responds to you will have a reasonable accommodation form. So disclosure for us is quite important. So the student themselves has to disclose. So sometimes students and even staff who are concerned, you know, and caring want to know if they can tell us that a student has a disability and whether we can then activate support. We rely a lot on student disclosure for issues of, you know, agency as well as POPIA. You know, that we respect students' right to access our support. We've also found that it's a lot more effective when the student seeks it out themselves as opposed to being referred by someone because of, you know, a lot of the stigma that is attached to the word disability. So what would happen is that someone sends us an email or comes to our offices. We have offices on all 3 of our campuses. So we have our offices at UFS are in the Cecil Library, right next to where the gallery is. I'm always amazed. Students know where the gallery is, but don't know where CUADS is. We're right next to it. You come in and you will meet any of our colleagues and staff members who can provide support. We then issue out a reasonable accommodation form that the student must please complete for us. It also has, so what we require in the info is information, obviously biographical data, but also information about the disability and the support that the student requires. We understand also that sometimes students are new to, you know, the experience of being disabled or injured, and some students perhaps due to, you know, the inequality in our countries are not necessarily aware of the different support services that are available. So then on the form, we have listed quite a number of them, depending on the context, but also there's also a space if whatever you require from our office is not necessarily listed, but we have listed quite a number of services on the form itself. And then I think the final page, which is also one of the most important of our forms, is the consent page. And the consent isn't that we are going to necessarily be disclosing your, you know, personal information or personal medical information. It is only to provide us the permission to make sure that we can liaise with other colleagues in ensuring that we can tailor, you know, your support as and how you need. So we won't say, you know, that you have a particular condition, but we perhaps will have to disclose, for example, that it's a student with a visual impairment, and therefore in that way we provide support to them. And then they will have a disability support coordinator, like I mentioned earlier, that there's a coordinator for all of our categories, disability categories. So I am for example, responsible for students with mobility impairments as well as students with mental health conditions. So I would be the disability support coordinator relevant at the Bloemfontein campus. And then, depending on, what the person's disability is. And then we activate it from there. And if it's something that requires that, we liaise with another department to ensure that you are accommodated, then that's what we do. But yeah. And of course, we need supporting documents with every form of the university. So I don't know if I mentioned it, that the reasonable accommodation form has to be accompanied by supporting documentation, whether from a medical professional, a psychometric assessment specialist, a psychologist, and so on.
All right. Thank you very much, Mosa. You've touched on quite, a lot in sensitive information this afternoon. So tell us, how would you then, based on your experience, of course, encourage a student or students who might feel uncomfortable with having to come forward and seek assistance, and, basically tell them that they should take advantage of the resources that are available to them?
Okay. I think for me, it's a lot of it has to do with mindset, right? Really what you need to overcome first is the negative stereotypes that perhaps you have adopted from our environment. A lot of how we perceive disability is not necessarily from a place of hatred. It's a matter of prejudice that we have all sort of been socialized in an environment that really views in very inferior and derogatory ways persons with disabilities, and therefore as a result that you'll find that someone has a there's sound issues. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you. I just want to say to our attendee who just joined, if they're experiencing any audio issues, perhaps leave the session and join again, but we can still hear you, Mosa.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. So if you have any sort of challenges in terms of, overcoming your own kind of internalized, negative perception about your whatever limitations you have, it's really important to understand and know that every single person is unique and different by virtue of us being human beings. There's no standardized way of being a human being. And if, for example, you encounter or you find that you grew up, a lot of people have this thing where they were told that you don't have to say you're disabled, but someone perhaps has an underdeveloped arm, or and so on. So it's important that you understand that don't make things harder for yourself. If you're already at the university, it means you have nothing to prove to anyone. You have met the standards, like I said, that the university set for you to be in whatever curriculum or program that you are in whatever course of study. So it really is up to us as the university to kind of level out the playing field, which is part of a lot of what we do in the Advocacy and Awareness Office, is about shifting those type of mindsets, making sure that we create an institutional culture that embraces people with their differences, because the university is quite interesting. It's sort of a multicultural exchange, actually. This is the one place you're going to encounter people from different backgrounds, people from different geographic locations, people from different, international students, encountering people with different sexual identifications than you. Like, there's so much to know and learn in this particular environment, that it would be a shame that one, you're the one who counts yourself out of that experience, but secondly, that you look down on or exclude anyone on the basis of their disability. So it's really important that we make sure that we provide support to our students. And for me, that's what I think, that there's a dedicated office there to make sure that you succeed. Make sure you succeed by coming to us.
Thank you very much, Mosa. So now tell us, how and when can students, reach out to CUADS for assistance?
Okay, so this one is almost a bit easy. So you send us an email, quads@ufs.ac.za. So CUADS is not with a Q, it's with a C. So it's CUADS@ufs.ac.za. You can also visit our offices. I've already mentioned that our offices at the university are inside the Sasol Library at the Bloemfontein campus. In the KwaKwa campus, it's room GF0013. That is what is it? Insika building. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. And I see Miss Mosa, I almost want to respond immediately. And then finally at South Campus, we also have an office inside the Neville Alexander Library. Ms. Kgalekgolo Motaung there is our disability support coordinator for our students at South Campus. So really just reach out to us, send us an email, any which way is fine. Even if you see me at the bridge and stop me, I'll stop.
So, Ms. Mosa, thank you very much for your insight this afternoon. And I see again the questions are just piling up for you. You are more than welcome to engage our students, or alternatively, you do have the option to engage with our students at a later stage when we get to a Q&A segment. And to our attendees this afternoon, our second poll is up. Do participate, respond to it so that we can continue the conversation. Mosa, we will circle back to you when we get to the Q&A segment of the conversation. Now that we've touched on Blackboard and CUADS, we are now moving to the Social Support Office, and the next person that we have lined up is Nothando. If we can have Nothando with us. All right. So, Nothando, I'm sure students are wondering, when they look at the correspondence they receive throughout the week, that there's social support, right? Can you please explain to us the role of the Social Support Office and how it contributes to the student well-being and their success?
Okay. Can I share my slides? I don't want to. Okay, is it safe?
Yes.
Just 1 second, because then it summarizes it. Otherwise, colleagues, you might be here the whole day. The wine glass, there we go. Okay, so in a nutshell, social support is about student well-being. So well-being in itself is very loaded. It has 8 dimensions. We're talking financial well-being, environmental, physical well-being, emotional, social. So it's quite loaded. Because this office was designed with the understanding that as a student, you have a lot going on, of course. So you have multiple identities, because sometimes you're stressed, not because your boyfriend dumped you, but because you don't have money for food. So that would be more of a financial well-being aspect. So if we're counseling you and not looking at the aspect of finances, it's not holistic anymore. So it was designed to try and integrate the support services that we have so that we can holistically respond to whatever's happening with the student at that time. So what we do have is we do this in 4 different ways. So the first one is financial support. So I think it's important to say that at social support, we are not psychologists, we are not social workers, but we work with them very closely. So we work with all our partners and the other support services. So if we have to assist students with finances, we don't pay school fees. I must just disclaimer that. It has to have a recommendation of an HPCSA registered professional. So I'll make an example. You'd have a case where a student has maybe attempted suicide 3 times. So the psychologist writes to us and says, you know what, at this point, the student needs to go home to the immediate family. And at the level which, of course, because of POPIA, they won't tell us what is happening. They'll just say they need to go home. And the mode of transport, there should be a staff member in the car. So don't even put them on a public transport because you don't know if they'll actually even arrive. So we do have extreme cases, they vary. So our role would then be to transport the student home and find a way through that recommendation. In supporting the student journey. So this is basically our ambassador program. We have 65 on all 3 campuses. What we have found that has worked is the peer-to-peer learning, and we get a lot of referrals that come from ambassadors, because I think students are generally more comfortable with speaking to their peers as opposed to perhaps interfacing with us. We have bereavement support. So this is just in the event if we have a student that passes away. 1 student is too many. So that's why at some point we will share even the programs that we have, because we try to touch on all the aspects of well-being so that it's a holistic process. But basically, when that happens, we just need to be notified, and then we have a whole process that we run internally as to how do we respond, how do we provide support to friends, family, and the community of the student. So our core function definitely is nurturing well-being. So what we try to do is literally be a one-stop shop. We try for students not to go for themselves from one department to another department. If we're intervening on a case, we try to bring the departments to you so that it's much easier. So I've just made a few examples, but with the type of work that we do, nothing is off the table. Anything can happen. So I can't even give you a list because, wow. I mean, last year, for the first time since I worked here, I had a case of a student that was pregnant and had a stillborn, and there were challenges there because culturally you have to bury beyond a certain month. But now, how do we transport the student? But what about the stillborn? So for us, nothing is off the table. I just made examples there. So with hospitalization, we visit students. So we'll usually be called by either a classmate or someone, but we always get the information. We have many entry points for information. Sometimes a student will write something on Facebook and comment on the university, and then they'll send us a screenshot to say, okay, let's track who this person is. Sometimes it's a parent writing to the university worried about their child or something is happening, and we respond as well. So part of hospitalization is we do the visits. That's for us to check what is happening, how long are you here? Is it impacting your academics? Do we need to speak to your faculty so that they are aware that you're here? If you're missing anything critical so that you can have a catch-up plan, do we need a psychologist to come and see you? But what they usually do is work with the psychologist at the hospital. So what else do you need so that your stay is more comfortable and you are feeling supported, even if you're not on our campus? Accommodation related, yeah, I know those happen quite often. It's the evictions. Sometimes it's break-ins. Others burn. Yes, I've had a student accommodation burn. Wild things. It could be violence related. Often around the time of when NSFAS releases that accommodation money, the theft is crazy and the mugging around that time, even the break-ins, and then the rest. It's not student protests. I must I must declare, but we'll have cases like a student was hiking. They got into a car, but the car was stolen. Everyone was arrested. So you get cases like that. And then health, anything related to health. So yeah, to answer you.
Thank you very much, Nothando. You've touched on quite sensitive topics this afternoon, but we do have to have such conversations. I also heard that you mentioned that, some of the cases, brought to your office through Facebook and other different, modes of communication, of course. I just want to hear from you, how can, students themselves, access the support that you have in place through your office?
We are available. We are on the website. We have offices. I'll share even the QR code. We have offices across the three campuses. We also have ambassadors. So I believe we are accessible, easily accessible. Yeah. And we do a lot of walk-ins. We are not appointment people.
Oh, all right. So I assume based on the work that you do, a lot of, most of the time your ear is on the ground because you just want to assess what's happening on campus with the students. Your head must literally be far reaching so that, you do get to those students who they themselves might feel that, the hand of support within the institution might not even reach them. But you just also mentioned something that, I would like you make us understand. You said that you don't have a particular system in place, but do you ever have situations where you have to identify students who may be in need of both social and emotional support outside, learning from their friends or their family members?
No, we don't have students that come themselves. So what we always encourage in our programs is community, because the community of the students is the one that says, but this problem is going too far. We need to contact them. So yeah, our ambassadors have really done a great job. We were intentional even about picking that it must be more than 50% that are off-campus students, because that's where most of our cases come from. So yeah. It really happens that a student comes. So I do encourage community. Have a friend in class, have a friend in the commune, play a sports with someone so that if anything, we know where to go.
All right. So you've touched on, thank you very much for those. You've also mentioned that, you've experienced the most rarest of cases ever, and you deal with them as they come, of course. But what are the most common challenges that students have experienced, they face, throughout their academic journey, that, these ones, they are common, and you sort of have a unwritten manual that exists, for you to address students with such?
The common ones, I will go by term because it changes as the term goes. So first term, it's more the financial needs. So students are coming in because you're not sure about your NSFAS, you're not sure if you're coming back, the N plus rule too, and all of that. So first term is really about financial support. So we run temporary accommodation. So students that come to campus and you can't finish registering, to get a place to stay, you get a meal. So those are the type of issues we deal with. After the first quarter, we then start dealing with more of the emotional needs now because people have settled in. So we work a lot with counseling because I'm not sure if everyone knows SED. So what has worked now is the ER24 can also provide trauma counseling. So that has relieved a bit of pressure because we can just call an ambulance. And then when you get towards the exam period, then it's usually peak anxiety. So the types of cases you get, most of them, it's panic attacks, anxiety, suicide attempts. That's for both around the exam period in June and the exam period, the later one. And then in August, it gets relatively calm, but September, it's better this side. On the Kwakwa campus, the muggings again, they start up, and the theft again, and the break-ins, yeah.
Thank you very much, Nothando. It's interesting, to learn. And I appreciate, the information that you're sharing with us, because I'm sure a lot of students are not even aware of such. But it is important, like I mentioned, that we bring such conversations to them so that they have a better understanding of what other students experience, because it could happen to anyone at any given point. So it's important to also know that there is support for every anything that they are likely to experience. Now tell us, Nothando, based on these situations, obviously one cannot anticipate them, right? And I'd like to think that whenever, anyone goes through whatever form of discomfort, that it might be a bit difficult for them to come forward and seek assistance, right? But we just want to hear from you this afternoon. How can students, recognize that they need support, and what steps should they then take to seek that support?
I hear you. Actually, I was looking at our data because a lot of it is referrals. Students really come from us. So I would really go back to, I encourage students to not be loners in higher education. Have communities, have circles, whether you play a sport, whether you're involved in chess, where your classes, your program, have circles, because I've seen how powerful it is that the people around you, even when you cannot see, are the ones recognizing the need, even if it's on your behalf. And then they're the ones that convince you to get help, because sometimes you can't recognize that you actually need the help. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Nothando. You mentioned that students do need a community. So within your office, are there initiatives or programs that essentially assist students with promoting their engagement? Or do you also have perhaps a peer support program or a network that students, can learn about and also form part of?
Oh, my year plan is full. Should I give you the short version?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we have different programs. I just want to check here. We have different programs. 2 years ago, we started a program specifically for male students because in a particular year, because of Papua, I can't say, more than 50% of the deaths were male suicides. So then we decided that, okay, there's something that we're missing, and looking at the throughput rate as well, and the marks and all of that, we were like, okay, something needs to be designed specifically for this cohort. So we have a program dedicated for their well-being. So it mixes things up from sports things to difficult dialogue conversations. It's a mixture. But we also concurrently have a safety and sisterhood program as well, which follows the same pattern as the men's wellbeing program. We have indigenous games that we do with Kofi Sports. This year, we're going to introduce a fun day because we're trying to promote physical well-being a lot, because sometimes you just need to go outside and play, and not all of us are competitive. We have as well financial literacy, because sometimes when we do our assessments, we recognize that it's not really you don't have money, you just don't know how to spend it. So we have a year program with APSA that we're running. And then we have our normal activations that we have every now and then, just to remind students that we are here. That's the short version.
Thank you very much for the short. My English is almost depleting. Apologies for that. Thank you for the shorter version. And I hope now that you've unpacked, because I think that question that I asked you now sort of sums up everything, and it puts things into perspective about what is happening. Because I already saw, as you started talking, there was a question of how can I be an ambassador in the social office? So people know, but I believe now the excitement, might have built up now that they understand, and the fact that you've, differentiated between the sisterhood program that you have as well as the males program that you have, they will, now start to come forward and express their interest to be part of the program. Thank you very much, Nothando, for your insightful discussion this afternoon and the perspective that you've given us. I see that there are questions, but they are probably way up there, but we will engage with you again in the Q&A segment. But if you would like to answer some of those questions already, you may do so. All right.
Can I do it in the Q&A segment? Because I can't see them now.
Okay, not a problem. Our technical team will just assist with clustering our questions to ensure that we are able to pose the questions to each of our speakers this afternoon. Thank you very much. I don't know if Moses is now with us because we've gotten to his part of the conversation.
Yes, I'm back, Bonolo.
Yes, I'm happy to hear that. Before we get into the serious part of this conversation, Moses, please tell us about yourself, what a typical day looks like for you, and also what's the most rewarding thing about your role?
My name is Moses Davids, and I am currently a master's candidate under the Faculty of Theology and Religion. And my speciality is basically in liberation theology, anything that has to do with the Black consciousness movement. What is most fascinating about my role, I think it's just the way in which I now have an understanding of the different procedures that one needs to take when addressing academic matters. Because I think previously, when I was still a student, I would just expect the SRC to basically just do things and not understand there's basically a proper communication channel. And if I just follow that, I would basically get my issues resolved. But yeah, I think that's what really makes my job really interesting.
Thank you very much, Moses, for also gracing us with your presence. So tell us, you've mentioned that, when you were still a student, which you still are, I must highlight that, you said that you expected things to just be done, right, for you. But now you find yourself to be on that hot seat, right?
Yes.
So tell us about your primary role as, the SRC academics and also being part of the student council, in terms of what does it do to support students, and how does the council strive to help improve a student life on campus?
Okay, so basically what my role as the SRC academics entails is to basically be the first or the second line of march that students attend to. My job is basically to advocate for them when it comes to anything that's academic related, and it is basically to assist them at all different academic matters. For example, students that are basically facing mistreatment by specific lecturers, or if they basically struggle to understand faculty rule books, the general rule books of the university, my job is to basically break down the information to them and basically inform them of different matters or procedures and policies that the university has. And as the student council, our role is basically to advocate for students. I think it's one thing that we also just need to build a thin line between advocacy and, passive aggressive advocacy. I think this year what we mostly focus on is basically advocating moving through the proper communication channels, because one thing we've just noted is that being passive aggressive always doesn't work, but actually following different procedures basically brings out the best outcome of things. And the one thing that we're currently doing as a council to ensure that students are basically integrated into the university space is that we've looked at the way in which we can come up with initiatives that are not just academic related, but initiatives that basically bring about entertainment and education at the same time. I think the term they use is edutainment. So there's quite a lot that we've been planning, and we really hope that each and every student is really going to participate and actually enjoy it.
All right. Thank you very much, Moses, for explaining what your role entails, and that your mantra is is towards advocacy, right? You and I, on a colleague level, we can talk about how there are certain structures that exist within your office. But this afternoon, I just want you to tell our attendees that what is the role of the faculty council, so that they understand that in addition to your role, there's also a faculty council, and what role do they also help in assisting them, specifically on their academic journey.
So the Faculty Student Council is a substructure of the CSRC academics, and they are faculty based. Each and every faculty has an FSC, and it composes of 5 members. So what their role is to basically deal with any faculty specific matters before they bring them up to my office. So one thing that the coordinator, Mr. Gamkhalo Litebo, initiated was that the faculty student councils basically deal with anything that has to do with their faculty. So if students have queries concerning tests, lecturers, or if they want to follow proper grievance procedure and aren't aware of it, or basically just want information about the faculty, either the courses, majors, how one can change from this course to that course, and anything that's academic related, whether it's missing a test and you need someone to assist you with communicating with the lecturer, their role is basically to assist you with that before the matter gets escalated to me. So they're basically the first line of march when students in each faculty need assistance when anything academic related. Please.
Thank you very much for that, Moses. So in addition to explaining your line of duty together with that of the faculty council members, how does the student council work to improve academic support for students who particularly face academic challenges?
So currently what we've been doing is that with the FSC, what we did is that we basically ensured that they're well capacitated with the different academic departments that we have on campus. And as the entire SRC council, what we're basically doing is that utilizing them to basically inform students of the different academic services that are on campus. For example, when it comes to issues of students finding it difficult to schedule their timetables or basically understand their rule book, we always refer them to the academic advisors, or in most cases, what we've also managed to do is basically communicate with academic advisors from all different faculties to inform their FSCs about their rule books and also basically give them an outline of it and a much more simpler way of explaining it to students. And I think in that way, we're basically building relationships with students and actually giving them information that they need. But on the council side, the SRC, what we're basically planning on doing, like I said, is that we have a lot of initiatives that are in progress, and when they do start happening, we'll publicize it. And those initiatives basically look at advertising a lot of departments on campus, and by advertising, basically just showing students that in as much as when a lecturer says go to right side for your assignment, it might sound boring, but in this moment, you actually need to go there because it's an academic department that will basically help you in future. So we're working a lot with different academic departments, faculties, and just utilizing everything by just bringing it up in a much more interesting way. Please.
All right. Thank you very much, This is quite interesting, and I'm quite curious to learn about those initiatives, so that respective departments can already look how they can be part of the initiatives that you have lined up, even though, at the moment, like you've mentioned, they are rather futuristic. Now that, you have interventions or initiatives that you would like to have, perhaps tell us, how does the Student Council then work to encourage students to participate in programs or initiatives, especially those who might feel isolated or feel, disconnected with the student community?
So what we've basically been doing as a council is that our approach to students this year is quite very different. I think one thing that I've just noted personally on my side is that when students see you outside and they see you with your SRC uniform, they think that you're the serious person. But I think the approach that we've gotten from our president is that we need to be more open towards students, and that way we can basically inform them of different programs that they can join. So what we're doing as a council is basically just speaking to different associations and also organizations on campus, and basically asking them to continuously basically advertise themselves on WhatsApp groups. What we've also just asked is that with associations that they should always have those what do they call them again? English is going up. Normally at the bridge, activations, yes, different activations. And we've also just encouraged them to basically have different WhatsApp groups where students can basically see what it's all about. But most importantly, I think the one thing that we're doing to ensure that students participate in different programs or initiatives on campus is by ensuring that we ourselves as the SRC also go to those places. Because I think that it's important that we don't just inform students about different initiatives or programs on campus that can basically make them feel at home, and we ourselves don't attend to it. So, for example, with the Spirit Cup that recently happened, we made sure that all the SRC members are there. And when we were there, we didn't basically sit down at one spot, but we walked around. And in that moment, we were even asking students, what are you studying? Are you part of this program? So I think an approach that we're using right now is to basically be on the ground and make sure that whenever we say attend to a specific initiative, we also present there.
All right, thank you for those insights, Moses. So, in addition to that, I just want you to walk us through the most common challenges or concerns that are often raised to students, in your office, and or in addition to the student council, and how are those often addressed?
The most common challenges, I think I'll just reference the ones that popped up a lot during registrations. The first one is the academic exclusion, number one, and the second one is basically students always being avoidant of reading their faculty rule books. And this is now specifically for second years and going up, because with first years it's quite understandable. But I think the one thing that students found very challenging when it came to appealing is the way in which they can basically write their motivations. You'll find students that come to your office, and when you listen to their reasons and their story, it's quite understandable, and you feel you're very sympathetic towards them. I think one thing that they found very challenging is how to put that in wording. um, some of the students that basically showed me their appeals and the reasons as to why they were rejected. The case was strong, but the way in which they structured everything basically made it seem as if they really weren't sure as to whether how to write it. So I think one of the things that the FSC and myself have been challenging and also asked the faculties to basically assist us with is to basically inform students about what exactly do you need to write in an appeal. What are the things that you need to mention? How can you basically write it down, and what structure can you follow? And with the faculty rule books, we've currently, it's also in our almanac with the faculty student councils and myself to basically have some sort of a faculty rule book roadshow. And this is also going to be in partnership with Ms. Gamachalo Tabe's office, where we'll basically be looking at ensuring that we inform students of their faculty rule books. But a twist is that we're not going to do it like how faculties do it, where they basically just read through everything, but we're basically going to have reference of students that were in similar situations to actually show them that if you do this, this is the implications of it. So I think it was just those two major issues, and the rest of them are just minor issues that myself and my substructures can basically handle.
All right. Thank you very much, Moses. I know that, in the call, we are aware that you mentioned that there are, a series of events lined up for the year. But do you perhaps know of initiatives that have been, implemented and for the primary purpose of, building a stronger sense of community among students?
Yes. Last year when we stepped into office, myself and the CRSAC postgraduate student she came up with the concept of basically celebrating students' academic journey. And we had our first final year's picnic. And the turn up was quite a lot, where we saw a lot of final year students and we celebrated their journey. So that's one of the initiatives that we've brought up, and it's something that we want to see continue even when we step out of the office. Because one thing we've noted is that we focus so much on academic matters that we forget that we also need to focus on the social part of students. And the social part of students doesn't really mean us throwing a party on campus, but basically creating a space where students can basically come together and just enjoy their journey as students, and also just relax and understand that in as much as there's also a mission that you need to fulfill, there's also that aspect where you need to rewind and sit down. So that's one of the initiatives that we've started, and it's something that we're going to continue with throughout the year.
All right, Moses, based on your response now, I can already anticipate what, the response is that I'm going to get with my next question. And now that you've mentioned this picnic that was, incepted as you stepped into office, from the time you started in your position to date, can you perhaps tell us about your most rewarding experiences? I don't know if we lost Moses over there. Oh, no. Okay. We will continue with him when he joins us again. I believe he's probably experiencing some technical issues. And I do know that our technical team will definitely get in touch with him so that we can continue our conversation with him. But while we wait for him to come back onto the call, I just want to see from our attendees if you perhaps have any questions for our speakers this afternoon. We will afford you the opportunity to, unmute your mic and ask any of the speakers the questions that you may have so that you can get clarity on certain points that you feel like, you are still a bit uncertain about at this point of the conversation. So I'm just going to be on the lookout for the questions. While we wait for the questions to queue in, our third poll just came up, so please make sure that you participate, respond to it, so that we can continue with the conversation this afternoon. But I don't see any hands. I just want to see from our speakers, have most of the questions been answered? Otherwise, we'll just circle back to. Okay, so apologies for the inconvenience. I'll just go to the questions that we've received. I just want to ask our attendees, if there's a question that you posed earlier on and it has not been responded to, please just send a comment so that we can give attention to that particular question. At the moment, we're just trying to gauge if there are any questions that have been left unanswered, and those are the ones that we want to give attention to. Right. If you don't have questions, you can also, pass your comments about, the information that you might have learned. I do see some questions are coming in. Okay, Evodia has responded to that question. If you do have a question for Moses, it might take some time until we get a response. We'll just have to wait for him to get back onto the call. I remember one from the time when Nothando was still talking, and the question was, how can one be a social support officer ambassador? So Nothando, I think you can take that question in the meantime.
Thank you, Bonolo. So we have applications that run in October. So we've already picked for this year. So we'll open again in October for 2026.
All right. Thank you very much for the response.
Bonolo, may I respond to Orokhopo's? Sorry, I seem to have missed the question.
Yes, yes.
Sure. The question is whether there's any way one can formally learn South African Sign Language on campus. And there are two ways you can do that. There's an academic department for sign language on campus. So you can actually study sign language from first year all the way into postgrad. If you wanted to learn it, and like get in-depth knowledge of not just the language, but the culture, and, as a career path. There's also short courses that they offer, the same department, sign language. They run them, I think, for 6 or 8 weeks, but you'd have to inquire with them as to how you access the service or the courses, the short learning programs. So you have beginners courses, you have intermediate as well as advanced. So yes, that there are ways in which you can learn sign language, but also you can make friends in your classes if you know or see anyone who is a deaf student, and you would like to, strike up a conversation. It's important as well. I think that's one of the best and easiest ways, because you're not only learning the language but building connection and friendship. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that detailed response, Mosa. Nothando, I spotted a question for you from Wandile, and the question reads, with regards to suicide attempts, at some communities, someone who tries to take his or her life is sometimes viewed as a coward. So how does the office practically address such stereotypical thinking?
Thank you, Bonolo. I answered that question. I did say that through our programs, we're intentional about how we design them, but also we use the principles of positive psychology. So we won't say how not to kill yourself or something like that. We call it courageous conversations when we know we're about to discuss something that is, yeah. So it's in every program that we have. We'll always have a city there because we don't want to speak in an area that is not ours. So we bring the psychologists to help us navigate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nothando, while I still have you, I don't know if you also answered the question about from Wandile again, where he said, I think social support is a broad concept, so I need clarity. Did you perhaps attend to that one?
No, I didn't attend to that one. What type of clarity are the students able to speak?
I'll just read the whole question rather. I just wanted to gauge if you perhaps attended to it. The question is, I need clarity. The office only services the students only? Oh, does the office only service students only, or the surrounding communities here in the Free State?
Oh, okay. We only interface with communities if we're dealing with the student. If your mom needs to be part of the conversation, maybe a counselor in the region. So it's a community of the student that spreads beyond the university. But We don't like run projects in communities. No, we don't do that. But we do have, through the social workers, for example, if we need to do a situational analysis of somebody's home, through social development, there'll be a social worker that will go on our behalf to go meet the family and do the assessment. But we don't run like programs in communities. Thank you.
All right, Nothando, thank you very much for that response. Mosa, I see there's a question also for you from Wandile again, asking how can one become an assistant for students that are within or are supported by CUADS?
Yes, I just replied in the chat box that we keep a database. A lot of students indicate quite frequently that they would like to volunteer in the office, provide support and assistance to our students with disabilities. So as and when we need or have, the need for those services, that then we reach out to them. But we also funny enough, currently have a vacancy for an intern in our office. So if anyone is interested in that, they can check it out on the UFS website. But generally, our vacancies are advertised on the UFS website. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the response, Mosa. I see Moses is back and he apologizes due to the technical issue that he experienced and that he will respond to the questions in the chat box. I don't know if we have any more questions so that we can wrap up the Q&A segment. If there aren't any, you can reach out to any of our speakers if there were certain questions that you were not quite comfortable with posing in the session this afternoon. We will share their details with you so that you can get in touch with their office when we send you our feedback form communication. So ladies and gentlemen, that then brings us to the end of our Q&A segment. I do believe that we probably didn't have a lot of questions this afternoon because all the information was straight to the point, or you're still going to spend some time processing all the information before you can reach out to any of the respective colleagues that we had on the call this afternoon. Just based on an observation from the previous webinar and the one of this week, many of you, even Moses touched on it, that, you might have uncertainties with how you navigate your academics. We do have resources for you lined up this afternoon to show you the information of the specific academic advisors that you can reach out to. But before we get to the part of the academic advisors, if you've not seen this logo and you're learning about it the first time, you better get the sense of what it is all about. We also have the Graduate Positioning Support Contact Center, which is called GPS at UFS. And then what we're currently displaying now is an image of our success coaches who can reach out to you, or you can alternatively call them, because they want to make sure that you graduate and you complete your studies accordingly. They assist with targeted and on-time academic support, general academic advising. They call you as students to ensure that you are on track towards graduation. And if you feel like you want to get in touch with them before they even get to you through a call or an email, you can call them on 051 401 9111 and you can select option 2. Alternatively, you can send them an email at gps@ufs.ac.za. Or if you want to chat with them, you can approach them on GovC chat on 087 240 6370. So this is the team that will assist you. If you don't want them to call you, you can definitely give them a call. In addition to that, we also have the support in place from the academic advisors. And today what we have lined up for you is the specific details of which faculty or central academic advisor within the Center for Teaching and Learning that you can visit. So with the academic advising colleagues, we have colleagues on the Bloemfontein campus. We will pause for a minute so that you can have a look at their details. So if you're from the humanities faculty, you've got Ms. Zandile. If you're from education or theology, you've got Ms. Kitumetse, also known as Kate. For health science students, we also have Ms. Deboho. For EMS at the Bloemfontein campus, we also have Ms. Masabada. For humanities, again, we also have Ms. Monique. And for NAS mainstream, we have Ms. Nanette. If we move over to the next one, you do also have the opportunity to look at have the details of the Central Academic Advisor, who also supports students that are in the extended program. We've also provided you with a table that just shows you the specific information of alternative academic advisors, or the specific information of the people that you would need to look out for or reach out for your specific program. Next. Next up, we have our colleagues. We've got Vusi for humanities students, we've got Lebohang for EMS, and we've got Tenjiwe for law, and we have Bitumelo for all athlete students, and then we've got Gatleho for NAS. Then for our students on the South Campus, we've got Cordelia for NAS, we've got Ngutseng for education, and Charo and Larato will be the ones that assist our higher certificate students. Right, for our Gogo students, we also have Central Academic Advisors for you. We've got Albert for NAS and education in the mainstream. We've got Tando for EMS, education rather, and NAS. And then we've got Uzanele for EMS and humanities mainstream. And then we've got Bongu Musa for EMS and humanities. Right, now that we've shared with you today the specific contact details of the relevant faculty central advisors within the Center of Teaching and Learning, you can also get in touch with us at #SecureTheGrad. Also remember to please complete our feedback form that will be circulating to you just before the session ends, and we'll also be sending it to you via email. We really want to know how this webinar assisted you and what we basically need to work on with the next one, so that you know you're well equipped to be on your academic journey. Remember that the session is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recordings with you so that you can catch up if there's some information that you would like to revisit after today's session. You can definitely follow us on Instagram at SecureTheGrad, and that is where you learn about our upcoming events, or if you just want to have a look at the information that we have that we share with you on a regular basis. You can also contact us or send us information if you would like us to assist you in any way or get you in touch with any of the speakers that we've had to date with the webinars we've had so far in the year. Now we've gotten to the most exciting part of our winners today, where we'll be announcing the people we indicated that if you entered the session with your full name and surname, you will be eligible for our award or our prize at the end of the session. And I've been given the notes, so I'm just going to read out your name. So if your name is mentioned here, please remember to get in touch with us. Send us an email with your details and indicating the specific webinar that you attended, so that we can give attention to your query and give you your prize accordingly. We've got Wandile, we've got Lutricia, Onkhopotse, and Tsepiso. These names for me, who's been on the technical side for most of the part, seem quite familiar, and I look forward to, us receiving those emails from you so that you can come and claim your award. I just want to congratulate everyone. And those of you who did not win anything today, you still have an opportunity with our next webinar. We are going to be parking our webinars for now, and we will definitely see you again in April for the graduation activation. We also have an entrepreneurship masterclass lined up for you. So if you have been sitting on an idea to be an entrepreneur and you don't know how to go about with it, we will be plugging you with the information in April. And then we'll be coming to you again in May to talk all things careers and also touch on wellness. So it's not goodbye. We do have other engagements lined up for you, but we just want to say for now, we want you to focus on your academics and making sure that you ace those assessments that are lined up. And that is why we've given you a 2-week webinar series where we specifically and intentionally focused on academic support holistically, so that you're well equipped and you know exactly who to contact if ever you're in need of any form of assistance. From us as #SecureTheGrad, we would like to thank everyone for attending the session this afternoon. We really thank our speakers for making the time to come and, provide their invaluable insights to our students this afternoon, and to our students for being reliable, actually turning out to come and learn more and already have questions lined up for our speakers. You've been a great audience this afternoon, and we look forward to hosting you again in the next couple of months. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.